Camper van, camper van, camper van. Don't you wanna go out camping in a camper van? Oh yeah.
Well, hello everybody. Bob here again, welcoming you to episode 2 of the conversion of a Pontiac, Montana to a tiny camper van. You can see the van right behind me, and let me get right into explaining to you some of the things I've done so far and what has not yet been done. The improvements to the van itself at this point are minimal. I did put these little vent shade items on, which will allow me to have the windows open just a crack and get some ventilation without letting rain in. And there hasn't been much else aside from putting license plates on it and removing the seats from the back, which lets me begin to take a look at the available space back here and start to imagine what can happen with it. Also to that end, I've been looking around at the things that I already have in my house and also other things that I can find that seem like they might be useful as the build goes on. And let me show you some of those items. Here I've got a cut down mattress from a cot that I had for guests to sleep on. It wasn't getting much use because the cot frame itself wasn't that comfortable, but the mattress is nice. And I had, like most homeowners probably, a pretty good selection of random lumber, and I'm starting to use that to build a frame for the bed that'll get the mattress up off the floor of the van and provide some storage underneath. You can probably see that that's at an angle. That's because the floor of the van is inconsistent. So this will be manufactured in such a way to contour to the floor of the van and provide good support and good storage underneath. There will be more to show with that as the construction continues. Around my own house, a couple things that I'm not sure will be useful unless I go with a bigger power system, but I did already have this power inverter 1500 watt unit that might come in handy. And then also one of those large audio amplifiers that you'll sometimes hear at a street corner. Probably impractical for a camper, but I'm including it on my list of potentially useful things because I already have it. Then where I work, this small piece of furniture was being discarded. They did some remodeling and replaced it, and it may or may not be able to be cut down either as a whole unit or maybe take some components of it that could be useful for what will ultimately be the living space, entertainment, office space. It does have this nice keyboard tray that pulls out and glides in. Could potentially be useful, and I'm erring on the side of taking things that might be useful, because if they turn out to not be useful, worst case scenario, you discard them later on. As far as storage underneath the bed, these are gardening trays. They're about 24 inches by, I think, maybe 16 or 18. I think those will be really nice for sliding under the bed to take advantage of the depth of the cot for storage, and yet you can pull them out to gain access to the things that are in there. I did get a 3.5 gallon bucket. That can come in useful for bio necessities inside the van. A lot of people use a 5 gallon bucket, but I wanted one that would be a little lower because there isn't a lot of headroom in the van. So I think that is likely to be useful, the kind of thing that you want to have and hope you don't need to use too much. And then I got really lucky. There's a upholstery shop in my neighborhood that serviced both regular upholstery jobs and also the sailing industry. That is a facility that's closing, And so they had a number of items that they were casting off, and I saw this sail, which I think may ultimately end up being useful as a shade canopy. Then again, it may not. But if it does, what a wonderful find. You know, obviously a durable material and weatherproof. It could serve nicely as a shade canopy. There's plenty of grommets in it and hardware, so that might be useful. That same upholstery shop had a couple of sets of cushions that might be useful for seating. These that are vinyl covered, and then these cloth covered cushions. So I took those as well. I don't think I'll be using them all, but again, I'll use what I do, and then the rest can be cast off. And they had a couple rolls of this material, which is a very reflective material. Normally people will cover their windows with Reflectix, but it's possible that some of that material will work as a light blocking curtain or shade material. So once again, grab it, see if it becomes useful, in which case you'll be glad, and if not, you can always discard it later. I also want to include some pictures, some graphics that kind of take you through the steps of some of my decision-making process that I'll be going through, that'll help guide the work that I do as this build continues. So let's take a look at some of those pictures, and I'll give you an overview of what that information means. Here we go. I also want to tell you about some small-scale electrical devices that I found that I think might be very useful. At a local large box retail store that shall remain nameless, I found this Go Power Plus, which is a device that has an internal storage battery. It comes with a charger for your car and also a charger for inside the house. And as outputs, it has a 12-volt output, 4 USB outputs, and also an AC output. So that's a device that can store some power if you've got a tiny solar setup, or if you're just charging it when you're driving. That can provide some useful electricity. Then I took this little fan that you can see here, which was out of a computer that was being discarded. It's a little 12-volt fan that draws 0.4 of an amp maximum. And I found a little controller that you can use to control the speed of the fan. These, I bought a pair of them from eBay because I think it might be nice to use these fans for battery-operated ventilation in the van. You know, it can get humid in there when you're sleeping. I did a test and found out that this little battery-operated Go Power Plus device can drive that fan for 3 full days for just over 72 hours straight on a low setting. And I think that ventilation may come in, might be something I'll really appreciate later on. Then I also picked up a couple of these LED light strips. You can probably barely see that this is on, although in the dark of night, this will radiate quite a bit of light in the van. So yeah, you can see that flashing. Those were also very inexpensive, about $5 each at that same local version of the large box retailer. So with just that small investment, that gets me started with electricity, and I'll see whether or not it's necessary to upgrade to a full solar system later on, but at least this gives me something I can start with. And here's an update with the bed frame pretty much fully constructed and installed in the van. So let's take a look at how this worked out. As you can see, there's that scrap lumber that I described, and underneath I've got storage. We're using these plastic gardening bins underneath the bed, so those slide out forward for easy access that way. And you can get to that one from the back door. And then there's also one that you can access just partially here from the side door. You can get to a little bit of what's inside there. And then the mattress fits on top real nicely there. I trimmed that down. I left a little bit of space behind the frame in case you have some tall things that you are hauling, tent poles or lawn chairs or something that you want to have storage for. Those can be stored there, and they're easily accessed by just hinging the bed frame up like this. Gives you wide open access to all the storage, drops right back down, and boom, it's a bed again. So I'm really happy with how that worked out.